happy, heavenly, solar return to Liliuokalani, I want to get that right, Hawaii's first and last queen. She was a genuine heroine who fought the last stand against the 19th century land grabbers. Lily was a critical thinking, courageous Virgo who left all her wealth to the children of Hawaii, but Hawaii itself, her kingdom, is a Leo, the lion of the Pacific, and no one has mentioned so far that I've noticed in all the coverage of the Lahaina land grabbing, no one has mentioned that it was on the 8/8 Lion Gate portal. Well, I consider it to be a ritual on the day when the highest energies from their Egyptian gods and all the rest of it can be focused with laser-like precision. But we'll get into that in another video. I'm trying to beat this. Stop! Hurry up before the sun goes down. Yes.
There's been a lot of talk about Hawaii lately, especially what's going to happen after they start rebuilding Maui. And it got me thinking and reminded me about the dark history of how Hawaii was stolen from its native inhabitants. It's a similar story to a lot of stories in history that begins with the arrival of missionaries with quote-unquote good intentions, and then they all get led down the paths of greed and corruption, and the story ends with the devastation of land, the oppression of native peoples, and the outright theft of an entire country. This is the dark history of Hawaii.
American missionaries first arrived in Hawaii. They quickly amassed power, building businesses and claiming arable land that they transformed into plantations. They worked closely with the ali'i, or sacred Hawaiian nobility, closely linked to the gods. The ali'i appointed missionaries to government roles, where they helped establish Hawaii as a sovereign kingdom with a constitutional monarchy. But once certain business opportunities emerged, namely the prospect of exporting sugar to the U.S. tariff-free, some of their descendants shifted positions. They formed a political group known as the Missionary Party and began plotting to annex Hawaii, bringing it under U.S. control. Liliuokalani and her siblings were born into an ali'i family. In 1874, her brother, Kalakaua, ascended the throne. But 13 years into his reign, the emerging threat crystallized. The Missionary Party called a meeting where an all-white militia surrounded and forced the king to sign new legislation. Later called the Bayonet Constitution, it stripped Native Hawaiians of their rights, diminished the monarchy's power, and ceded control to this group of white businessmen. 4 years later, King Kalakaua died. Heartbroken, Liliuokalani said, by the base ingratitude of the very persons whose fortunes he had made. Prepared to fight, she assumed the throne. Despite death threats and rumors of insurgency, Queen Liliuokalani was determined to restore power to her people, an estimated 2/3 of whom had lost their voting rights. Flooded with requests for change, she authored a new constitution. But before she introduced it, the so-called Committee of Safety, a new organization that consisted of many missionary party members, hatched another plot. Under the false pretense that this new constitution endangered American property and lives, they staged a coup on January 17, 1893. More than 160 U.S. Marines marched to the palace, where the Committee of Safety removed Queen Liliuokalani from office. Thousands of Hawaiian people protested, some wearing hatbands reading Aloha Aina, or Love of the Nation. The alleged provisional government declared Hawaii a republic the following year. They proclaimed that Hawaiians couldn't vote or be government employees without signing a new oath of allegiance. Many refused. The following year, some of Liliuokalani's supporters attempted a counter-revolution. The Republic responded brutally, jailing hundreds and sentencing 6 people to death. In exchange for their release, the Republic made Liliuokalani sign a document that claimed to relinquish her throne, and they imprisoned her in the palace. Under constant guard, she composed songs expressing her love for her people and began making a patchwork quilt that told the story of her life. While she was only allowed news that had been reviewed by her jailers, her supporters often brought her bouquets from the garden she dedicated to them, wrapped in newspaper. After 8 months, Liliuokalani was placed under house arrest. As soon as it was lifted, she traveled to Washington, D.C. with Hawaiian nationalists and over 20,000 signatures. There, they successfully convinced Congress to halt the Republic's annexation treaty. But the following year, the Spanish-American War began. Seeing Hawaii as a strategic military base, President William McKinley declared it a U.S. territory on July 7, 1898, breaking international law and devastating Queen Liliuokalani and her people. She spent the rest of her life petitioning for the restoration of her lands, native Hawaiian rights, and national liberation. When she died in 1917, these dreams were unrealized. A member of the group that forced Queen Liliuokalani out of office once declared, "If we are ever to have peace and annexation, the first thing to do is obliterate the past." They failed at this goal. Queen Liliuokalani left a resilient legacy. Her commitment to her land and people never wavered, and many Hawaiians continue to fight in her memory. Speaking of Hawaii's children, Queen Liliuokalani said, "It is for them that I would give the last drop of my blood."